Let's get some analysis now from legal scholar Jonathan Turley of George Washington University. Jonathan, thanks for being here.
Thanks.
What struck you from today's hearing?
Well, what was really interesting was the different narratives. The fact is that the IG was not likely to find that decisions were based on bias. But it is also not true that he didn't find bias. He actually found a lot of bias. It's just that he's not going to assume that the bias he found was the cause of decisions that were taken by the FBI.
Not his mandate, in other words.
That's right. And so unless someone was going to confess or help out with an email detailing some conspiracy, there wasn't going to be a finding that bias drove the decisions. But the Republicans were correct. The report is heavily laden with very disturbing statements of bias, including from the chief investigator. So the question then is, that wasn't his mandate. He's not going to make those assumptions. So where do you go from here? The answer in the Constitution is you go to Congress. Congress has an oversight duty to look into this. Some of these questions are simply not answered. You know, for example, Lindsey Graham was correct to raise the issue of Clinton's IT expert who was accused of lying repeatedly to the FBI, scrubbing her server after being told it was part of an investigation and something that Congress was looking for, and took all these actions that would have justified, in most of our view, an actual criminal charge. Instead, they gave him immunity, which at the time left all of us just dumbfounded why you would possibly do that. Those questions are just not answered because that's not the mandate.
After reading the IG report and seeing the testimony today, the case for obstruction of justice?
Well, I got to tell you, this IG report makes a difficult obstruction claim based on the Comey firing virtually inconceivable. You know, you have the Inspector General saying that Comey was insubordinate, that he deviated from policies, that these were serious violations. The FBI director echoed that today. Those are all good reasons to fire him. So unless you're going to make assumptions that Trump acted for every wrong reason instead of the obvious right ones, it's going to be real hard to make out a criminal case.
There are other teases of things to come. Another IG report. It sounded like several leak investigations and then even an investigation into Comey's personal use of email and whether there was classified material there.
Yeah, if I was Comey, I'd hear a whistle on the track because they're looking at his removing these memos from the FBI, which I've said from the beginning is clearly FBI material. The FBI's indicated that. One might have had classified information in it. I can't imagine the Inspector General looking then saying, okie doke, that's fine. You just feel anytime you're fired to remove any files you want and then leak them to the media. So that train's going to come down. It's not going to be good for Comey.
Let's turn to the first story, and the story that's gotten a lot of attention. What the administration is doing, what Democrats are doing, what Congress can or should do on this case with separating parents and children along the border.
No, it's a really sad story because, as usual in Washington, there's truth and falsity on both sides. Everyone's spinning this, and in the middle are all these kids. The fact is that the administration does not have to separate the kids from their mothers. That's a choice. That's a policy choice. It's also true that this issue has been forced by a change in policy to treat these as criminal matters, something many citizens support. I mean, Donald Trump was brought to power because he was pledged to get tough on immigration. Getting tough on immigration means to switch from a civil or administrative process to a criminal one. Once you do that, you have these type of separation problems. And so there is truth on both sides here. There are some agreements and some laws that govern how long and under what circumstances you hold children. But can the administration keep these families together? Yeah, I think they could.
There is a choice that is made at the border there. Rich Lowry indicated it in an op-ed a couple of weeks ago in which he wrote, the U.S. Marshals take custody of the adults when the children are held by the HHS. The prosecution of the adults for illegal entry usually happens quickly. Then if the adult wants to return home, she or he is reunited with her child, they're sent back together. Where it gets more complicated is if a migrant claims asylum. Trump administration wants to hold migrants pending adjudication of those cases. If they're released, there's a good chance they'll abscond. But even if the cases are handled quickly, i.e. in a couple of months, the government has to release the children sooner thanks to a 20-year-old consent decree and associated legal rulings. It's just one of the distortions that makes a rational policy at the border impossible. When accompanied children from Mexico cross the border, we can quickly return them home. An anti-trafficking law makes it nearly impossible to do that with unaccompanied children from Central America. Basically, as long as migrants know that they can get in, they will keep coming and bringing their children on this harrowing journey. journey. If they claim asylum,
right,
they're essentially choosing to separate from their children.
Yeah, and I think this is all due to that paradigm shift. When the administration was treating this as a purely administrative process, not a criminal one, there were fewer complications that arose. Once you shift to a enforcement system, a criminal one, it magnifies these problems. But this law does create a glaring conflict in this 20-day clock running. So you can release, but then you have this gap of the mothers moving on a different track from the kids. That's a legitimate issue that the Trump administration wants to resolve.
And you're talking a lot of kids.
It's a lot of kids.
Secretary Nielsen said they could go to port of entries, legal port of entries, and claim asylum and stay together.
Right.
But this is dealing with illegal border crossings.
Yeah, what is unfortunate, I think both parties are playing chicken here, but there are kids in the car. And so I think that everyone's going to have to take a breather, rare time, and just get together and say, let's get this off the table. It's not good for this country. It's certainly not good for these kids.
Yeah, the images are horrible. Jonathan, thank you very much.
Thank you.